Yeah, there's a bunch of things that need to be done to this guitar. Let's put it on the tech deck and take a closer look. It is a beautiful thing. Look at the burst on it. Look at the top on it. There's a whole whack of stuff coming down the pipe for this one. One thing at a time. Obviously, this was converted to a Floyd Rose. We have a brand new replacement that we're putting in here. You can see where the stop tailpiece was once upon a time. But there's a couple of things that are pretty disturbing about this. Let me point this out. Like, look at this. Like, who would hand a guitar back to a customer with a locking nut put on like that? I mean, that's just over the top. They obviously cut off the end of the fingerboard. So I'm going to have to do some extra reconnaissance on this, and we're going to figure out where the intonation lies, because this ain't tuning the way it is right now. This is what was underneath the locking nut bed. So not only did he lop off a chunk of the fingerboard, but hopefully he's got stuffed under there. This is getting complete neck surgery because the neck broke. And luckily we got tons of fret on there, so we don't have to do a refret. But I want to do a little bit of math here with the rule and figure out whether he got the bridge in the right place to begin with. Well, you can see this guy lopped off 3/32 of an inch, actually 7/64 of an inch, off the end of the fingerboard. What would possess him to do that? I have no idea. But before we put a locking nut on here, we've got to do the neck surgery. We've got to build back that ledge and find the values for the intonation. As Jody mentioned, this guitar sat in the case for 25 years. Okay, so this is the back of the neck. We're going to sweep right through that. This is going to be gone completely. But the other thing I wanted to point out, sort of bring you in close here, you see those sort of chatter marks here in that hole? This guy used a drill to drill out this headstock. That is a huge no-no. You need to hand ream it one rotation at a time to get a perfect press fit. When you use a drill, the action of the drill wants to pull it right through the headstock. It's amazing he didn't split this headstock. In fact, if these holes would have been in line with the wood grain, guaranteed he would have split this headstock. The only thing that saved him is the shape of this headstock. Okay, Jody, I want to bring you in real close on this one. You're not going to believe this. These are the new body inserts for the new trem system that you sent up, Jody. I needed to open up those holes for these inserts because they were not machine thread. They were actually wood thread, the old posts. In order for me to get the fit right, 25/64 was too tight. 13/32 was too loose. So what I ended up doing was, because you're driving this into hardwood, I actually checked this out first on a chunk of mahogany, deliberately right near the end of the piece to see if it would split. So that was my test run. So what I ended up doing was I did full bore 25/64, which was a bit too tight enough to split the wood. And then I dropped in part way with the 13/32 bit, right? Or 26/64, right? That's the difference. So the actual perfect hole was somewhere between 25 and 26/64. Pretty nuts. So here's what we got now. So this drops in, but it doesn't drop in all the way because the bottom of that hole, that last 1/4 inch, is 25/64. So this will give us a rock solid fit. They support quite a bit of weight. The weight of the whole trem system, the string pull and everything else. You do not want these things rocking in that hole. So that last 1/4 inch, we just press fit it. Flush. This side too. And that's what we got. And we have another neck surgery kit going to Gibson Brands in Los Angeles, California. I've sent a few video links along for you, Ryan, that walk you through it step by step, so you'll be good to go by the time you get this thing. Cheers. Well, I've opted to go with a 5/16 inch diameter straight double fluted bit to get rid of most of this garbage here. And we will not be drilling through the neck. whether it's a locking nut or not. We're definitely not drilling through the neck. And I've got some big leaf curly maple stock to fabricate those splines. For all you guys that have the tech decks and neck surgery kits, if you haven't come across this, you will. So listen up. Here's how I do this. So I have two short temporary splines. This neck was drilled through to bolt on a locking nut bed. Everybody was doing this years ago. This will not be drilled through when I'm done. What I've done is I've got two temporary splines. The real splines are here on either side. They've been cut and press fit, ready to go. This is a temporary half dowel and a temporary half dowel and a temporary spline. So there's hide glue around the circumference of the dowel, and it's glued temporarily. So once that sets, I'll actually drill down with a brad point bit, then I'll get a perfect hole. So the reason we're doing it in this order is you don't want to compromise the structural integrity of the actual real splines that we're putting in. These are just short filler pieces that allow me to drill these holes. Once these temporary splines have been drilled out and we have a perfect circle to push our dowels into, then we'll glue the real splines in, and then the real half dowels will go in after the fact. This sounds so confusing when I explain it, but yeah, picture's worth 1,000 words. You'll be getting the video play by play. These are the tolerances we were looking for. So the splines are 5/16 of an inch, full width, full length, and then those half circle, not quite half circle, I had to go with the holes that were there. I just cleaned them up and then filled them in solid, also with big leaf curly maple dowel. So when we're done, this will be stronger than the day it was made. The rest of the through drilled hole will have to be filled in from underneath. And that takes care of the lion's share of the damage. Well, Darcy's got that neck surgery shaded in on Joe. It's top coated, it just needs to be rubbed out. Okay, we're back to reversing the damage here on this Gibson Flying V at Jody's. So I wanted to show you this before I go to the next step, so you'll be completely in the loop on where I'm going with this. Before I pull this apart, I want to bring you in close and kind of show you what we're doing. So we're basically filling in the mess that was left by the last guy. I probably just want to give you a shot of how we accomplish this. Well, this is a first for me. What we're doing here is we're building up that shelf that was kind of butchered all those years ago, and the last piece of ebony that I put in, that will bring us back to square one. That is where the end of the fingerboard should be. So my suspicion is that guy that lopped off the fingerboard all those years ago wanted to make room for this locking nut bed. This is the actual end of the fingerboard. That's where it was before this guy started. So if we place this locking nut here, we essentially do not have the room for this type of locking nut. I'm not saying you can't put a locking nut, it's just that this type of locking nut is not going to work. We're going to take this thing right out of the equation. I will be gluing that piece back on, and then I will gently kind of radius that last little bit to match the fingerboard radius. Then we're going to cut a compensated nut and just ignore the locking nut completely. Obviously, this locking nut is not going to work, and that's where all the trouble started all those years ago. So if we're going to use a locking nut, it may have to be actually machined for this particular ledge. Well, this is a first, even for me. We're back to square one. The fingerboard is the length it needs to be. Now we'll build a brass compensated nut. So I'm starting with a block of brass. I just want to bring you in at the beginning stages here, and this is what I got. Okay, here's our next step. I got to file a lot deeper and just hone the whole thing a little closer to the final depth before we set it on the guitar and put the strings on. First of all, we'll come in, I'll give you a close look at what I've done with this compensated nut. Well, the locking nut was definitely an extra challenge on this. So the conventional locking nut that came with the kit, well, it wasn't going to work. So this is the bed for the locking nut. I did utilize the actual blocks. You'll have a closer look at this as I pull it apart. Darcy needs to do his final touch-up. We now have a brass compensated nut that's screwed into place with 2 wood screws that go through the ebony underneath, just barely bite into the maple dowels that I put to fill the holes from the last guy. Now, just ahead of the compensated nut, that's where we have this locking mechanism. So these strings now do lock. There are 4 small brass wood screws that go through the brass plate. This brass plate was drilled and tapped to receive the proper thread of this bolt to lock these blocks down and immobilize the strings completely. Okay, so this is the new bridge. We got that bridge nice and level with the top. We got our fine tuners work beautifully, and the locking nut. So this is finally, after 25 years, this is doing what it was meant to do. I still have the fret dress to do and the edge dress to do, but I thought before I pull it apart, I would go through the tuning process and just to hear how accurately it tunes, because now we have a compensated brass nut. So the locking mechanism, as you can see, is a separate thing. It's beyond the nut. This is the nut itself, and all of the strings are compensated for the 10 to 46 at concert pitch. Let's look at the octaves. G. And lastly, the 7th and corresponding 19th fret octave. See if anyone can peg this tune. So essentially what I've got here is a 10th interval, which you've heard me play lots of times, with a 9th. With a 9th on top. Or actually, more accurately, a second. The distance between this note is a second. So that's a major second. This is a minor second. It's always a great test for the overall intonation of the guitar. Like, you play those two notes by themselves. When it's played and enveloped within a chord or an arpeggio, you know, something that was dissonant now becomes consonant. It's a sort of great way to build melody lines and little sketches, harmonic, melodic sketches on the guitar. So we'll start up here. Here's another exercise again. This is just diatonically in the key of G major. So here's D major. This is a little bit better ending for the end of that D major phrase. I'm going to try something in a B, kind of a B Latin funk minor thing. have this set up right now to float, so you can kind of pull back. But the problem with setting up a really sensitive tremolo system like that to go both ways, to pull or to push, it is essentially affected by room temperature. If the strings warm up, they stretch. If they cool off, they contract. So the safest bet is to set this type of tremolo up not to float. And that's what we did, I believe, on the last Floyd Rose style tremolo system that I did for Jody. So I'm going to do the same here. So it will be dive only. You won't be able to pull back, and it will stabilize the tuning considerably. If you have an ambient temperature that's plus or minus 1 degree, you're fine. But in the real world, if you're jamming in a warehouse or you're playing in a hot living room, your guitar's going to be all over the map. It's just nature of the beast. Like I said, you heat the springs up, they expand. You cool them off, they contract. So in a nutshell, you're better off just having this type of tremolo system set up for dive only, and then when it comes back, there's some type of stop mechanism to prevent it from going any further. That's it for now. Now, I do have to say that I have not dressed the frets, so there's a little bit of buzzing going on, and there is some minuscule little intonation issues because the frets have not been dressed yet. Oh, of course, the other thing is this set of strings I've tightened and loosened 40 times over the process of installing this tremolo, setting it up, tuning it down, locking nut, compensated nut. So these strings are completely fried. I'm going to do another video later on with the brand new strings, ultra tweaked, frets dressed, and the stop for the tremolo, and you'll hear the difference. Welcome back, everybody. Mike McConville, Stratford, Ontario, Canada for StringTech Workstations. We're back to this Flying V. I'm going to bring you in close as I disassemble this compensated nut and locking mechanism that I configured out of brass. As always, you'll get a play-by-play. Okay, this whole thing is going to make a lot more sense now as I pull it apart and give you a front row seat on exactly what I did to resurrect this guitar that sat in disuse for the last 25 years. Because of the shape of this headstock and the way that the strings splay to get to the machine heads, this typical locking nut bed, it just wouldn't work. And that was the problem this guy ran into all those years ago. So here's what we got. So I take the strings off, and I'm going to pull this whole thing apart and show you exactly what we did to rescue this beautiful Gibson Flying V. First of all, these were drilled and tapped. There's 4 short brass wood screws that hold the actual locking mechanism into place. This piece of brass actually butts up against the actual compensated brass nut. So when we tighten down those tabs, all of the strings are completely immobilized. It straddles over top of the truss rod cover. So pull this off so we can do a fret dress end to end. There's quite a bit of wear actually in these frets. Jody obviously was playing this guitar a lot all those years ago before the catastrophe struck. So this is our compensated brass nut. And that's what we've got. I do need to check the lay of the neck with a straight edge, see if we need to adjust this nut before we get started with the fret dress. I'm also going to pull this neck pickup out of the way. With this neck pitch and the height of that pickup, even the pickup ring, we're just going to pull that out of the way while we do our fret dress. So I'll tuck this foam onto the bottom. So wrap this and just kind of tuck it aside. You don't want to scratch that beautiful finish on the top. So now we'll just slip that into this Ziploc bag. Got our little guard made out. I put a relief cut in that just to move that pickup right out of harm's way while we're doing this work.